Hi, I'm Jamin. Welcome to the class. In this class, we're going to look at second conditional. So by the end of the class, you should be better able to use second conditional to talk about imaginary or impossible situations. During this class, there will be some questions for you to answer. You can find these below the video. I will tell you when to answer the question, and I will give you some time to do so. Okay, let's get started. We're going to begin by reading two short paragraphs that are showing our language focus for this class in context. Let's read these together. If I were a bird, I would fly high in the sky and visit different countries. If I found a beautiful place, I would rest there and sing songs. If I met other birds, I would make friends, and together we would explore the world. Paragraph 2. If I see a bird, I will watch it fly through the trees. If it lands nearby, I will take a photo to capture its beauty. If the bird sings, I will listen carefully and enjoy the music. Let's look at a question about these two paragraphs. How many sentences in these two paragraphs contain the word if? Could you please count? So as you see, there are 6 sentences that contain the word if. And each of these sentences with the word if is a conditional sentence. So let's look at what is a conditional sentence. A conditional sentence helps us to understand the connection between a cause and effect. These sentences will contain a condition, and this is the cause, and it will connect the condition to a result, the effect of that cause. These sentences usually start with the word if. After if, we will say the condition, and then we will describe the result of that condition. Some conditional sentences talk about real or possible conditions. And other conditional sentences talk about imaginary or impossible conditions. Now, thinking about those different types of sentences, real versus imaginary situations, let's look back at our two paragraphs that we began with. Which paragraph is about a real or possible situation? Is it paragraph number 1 or paragraph number 2? Could you please look at the next question below the video and choose the correct paragraph? So the real situation is paragraph number 2, seeing a bird. This is very possible. Taking a picture of a bird, listening to a bird. This is possible. Let's look at our second question then. Which paragraph is about an imaginary or impossible situation? And that, of course, is paragraph number 1. In paragraph number 1, we are imagining being a bird, which is impossible. It will never happen. So paragraph number 1 is second conditional. Paragraph number 2 is first conditional. Now, we're going to be focusing on these second conditional sentences. Let's start with sentence number 1. Could you please read sentence number 1? And can you look at the next question below the video and choose the picture A, B, or C that matches sentence number 1? Of course, the picture that matches that is picture B. Let's go to sentence number 2. Please read sentence 2, look at the next question below the video, and choose the picture that matches this sentence. So, of course, that is picture C. So, of course, sentence number 3 matches picture A. Now that we have seen these second conditional sentences, let's learn a little bit more about them. Let's look at when do we use second conditional. As we have been discussing, second conditional is used to talk about an imaginary or an impossible situation, and we can use these to imagine how the present or the future could be different. Another example, the world would be a sad place if there were no dogs. Well, this is not real. Our world has many, many dogs, but we're imagining what it would be like if there were no dogs. A second time where we use second conditional sentences is when we are giving advice. And let's look at an example of this. We use this form if I were you. Now, I'm not you, but I am imagining what would I do if I were you. So we use this if I were you, and we continue to give our advice. If I were you, I'd try to find a new job. Let's look now at what is the grammatical form of second conditional. We are looking back at those three sentences that we matched to the pictures. We have these sentences now color-coded. The beginning of the sentence is what we call the if clause. The second part of the sentence, which you can see in green, is called the main clause. So conditional sentences contain two clauses. Let's look at what is the verb form that we use in second conditional sentences. In the if clause, the verb that we use is past simple. If we look at number one, could. Number two, were, and similarly with number three, were. These are past simple verbs. Now, looking down at the main clause, we use the word would, and after would, we use the infinitive verb without to. If we look at our examples, I would travel. Travel is the infinitive without to. In sentence number two, she would buy. In sentence number three, he would play. So the if clause uses past simple, the main clause uses would, and the infinitive verb without to. Now, as you can see here, very frequently in spoken English, we will contract the would. So we might say I'd, you'd, he'd, she'd, and so on in spoken English. Another thing to understand about conditional sentences is that the order of the clauses can be reversed. And let's look at that. We have our three sentences here that we were looking at a moment ago, and we have simply taken the main clause that was at the end, and we have put it at the beginning of the sentence. When we change the order of the clauses, the meaning of the sentence is exactly the same, and it is grammatically correct also. So we can begin with the if clause, or we can begin with the main clause. Both of them mean the same thing, and both of them are grammatically correct. If we look down here at our form, you can see that all we have done is an exact reversal. We start with would, followed by the infinitive without to, and we finish the sentence with if, followed by past simple. Now, something to note, if you look at the space between the clauses here, you notice that there is no comma. When the if clause is second in the sentence, we do not use a comma. We only use the comma when the if clause is at the beginning of the sentence. Let's do a little bit of practice with what we have learned so far about second conditional sentences. Let's look at the first sentence that we're going to be working with. We are looking in this sentence at the if clause, and we need to use the word have with the correct form. Let's look at our three options. I'd like you to look at the next question below the video, and I'd like you to choose the correct option to complete this sentence. So the correct choice here is had. In the if clause, we need past simple. Let's look at sentence number two. In sentence number 2, we're looking at the main clause. We need to use the verb travel with the correct form. Let's look at our options. Can you please look at the next question below the video, and can you choose the correct option to finish number 2? So the correct choice here is would travel. In the main clause, we use the word would followed by the infinitive of the verb without to. Let's look at sentence number 3. In this sentence, we're going to be completing both clauses, starting with the if clause. I'd like you to look at the next question below the video, and can you choose the correct option to complete this first gap in the sentence? So the correct choice here is past simple in the if clause, lived. Let's look now at the second gap in the sentence. Here we are looking at the main clause. Looking at our options, can you please look at the next question below the video, and can you choose the correct option for this second gap? So the correct choice here is would visit, would followed by the infinitive. We're going to be looking now at something that is unique or different about how we form second conditional sentences. Let's look at this word right here. This is the verb be. In the past tense, the simple past, be has two forms, was and were. The one that we use depends on the subject, I, you, we, he, they, and so on. In second conditional sentences, though, we always use the word were. We do not use was. Let's look at some examples of what this looks like. Looking at our first example here, in a normal past simple sentence, we would always say she was. However, in a second conditional sentence, we do not use was, we use were. So the correct sentence is, if she were rich, she would buy a huge house. Similarly, looking at the second example, normally with he in the past simple, we would say he was. But in a second conditional sentence, we use were. So if he were tall, he would play basketball. The last area where this is important is with that advice giving second conditional sentence. In this example, if I were you. So normally, if we're talking about I was, but in the second conditional sentence, we use were. So we would say, if I were you, I would study more to improve my grades in school. So if we have the be verb in the if clause, we are always going to use were. Let's look now at making negative second conditional sentences. We do this by using the word not to create the negative form. And the negative form can be in the main clause or in the if clause. And let's look at two examples of that. Starting with sentence number 1, we have made the main clause negative. If he knew the secret, he wouldn't tell anyone or would not tell anyone. In our second example, if she didn't have a busy schedule, she would join the dance class. Now, looking at sentence number 2, let's check that we understand. Does she have a busy schedule? The answer is yes, she does have a busy schedule, but we are imagining if she did not have this schedule, what would happen? Let's look at how we form the grammatical form of these negative sentences. When we are making the main clause negative, as we saw in example number 1, we use would not, and we will often contract that to wouldn't in spoken English, and after we use the infinitive without to. When we are making the if clause negative, as we see in example number 2, we use did not, or contracted as didn't, and we use the infinitive without to. Let's look now at a question in second conditional. We might want to ask somebody a question that is imagining something that is not true. When we make a second conditional question, we invert the subject and would in the main clause. Let's look at what that looks like. We're starting here with a normal positive second conditional sentence. If she got a good job offer, she would move to a different country. Now, if we want to make this a question, we are simply going to reverse she and would, and we're going to change it like this. So the question form, as we can see here, if she got a good job offer, would she move to a different country? And now we have a question. Of course, we can also reverse the clauses, as we see in our last example here. Would she move to a different country if she got a good job offer? So to make a question in second conditional, the grammatical form, we are changing the main clause. We do not change the if clause. That stays the same, if plus past simple. But in the main clause, we are going to reverse or invert the order of would and the subject. We're going to practice now with making some negative and question sentences in second conditional. Let's look at the first sentence that we're going to create. In the first sentence, we want to make the if clause negative, a not form of have. Could you look at the next question below the video and choose the correct option for sentence 1? So our correct choice here is did not or didn't, followed by the infinitive without to. If they didn't have an exam tomorrow, they would come to the party. Let's look at our second sentence. In our second sentence, we're going to make the main clause negative. Can you please look at the next question below the video and choose the correct option for sentence 2? So the correct choice here, he would not or he wouldn't feel so tired all the time if he ate healthier food. Number 3, we're going to create a question. Look at the next question below the video and choose the correct option to complete number 3. So for the question, we reverse the order of would and the subject. What would you do if you won the lottery? And in number 4, we're going to practice with another question. Please look at number 4 and the next question below the video and choose the correct option to complete it. So in number 4, again, reversing would and the subject. If you had $1 million, who would you give some of it to? We're going to finish up today by looking at some sentences in the second conditional, and we're going to be checking that the grammar in the sentence is correct. Some of these sentences are correct, and some of these sentences are not correct. Starting with sentence number 1, I'd like you to read that sentence carefully, and I'd like you to think about yes, number 1 is correct, or no, number 1 is not correct. Look at the next question below the video and choose yes or no. So number 1 is not correct. To make the sentence correct, we need to change ride, which is present, to the past simple. If people rode bicycles more, there would be less traffic in cities. Let's move on to sentence 2. Look at sentence number 2 carefully. and think about yes, it is correct, or no, it is not correct. Please look at the next question below the video and choose yes or no. So no, number two is not correct. To make it a correct sentence, we need to change will to would. We do not use will in second conditional sentences. Let's go to number three. Read number three carefully. Think about yes, it is correct, or no, it is not correct. Please look at the next question below the video and choose the correct option. So yes, number three is correct. Moving on to number four. Please read that sentence carefully, and looking at the next question below the video, choose either yes or no. So number four, no, it is not correct. To make it correct, we need to use did not. If cars didn't use gas, our air would be less polluted. And finally, let's go to sentence number five. After reading the sentence carefully, look at the next question below the video and choose yes or no. So yes, number five is a completely correct sentence. Okay, that's the end of the class. Hopefully, you now have a better understanding of how and when to use second conditional. Thank you for watching.